in all to a very exciting and unique video here on the culture of currency. As you know, we love to bring you the history and culture of coins from around the world, as well as place them on our 60-point scale in search for elite level coins that score over a 50 on our scale. Today is no different in that respect, but it is different in the fact that I am taking a coin well over 100 years old and doing this. Usually we have a current cultural weight, but I'm going to have to rate this in both its time and in the current time. So for the first time ever, I will be issuing a score for today's cultural relevance and a score for what it would have scored in 1901 when this particular Morgan silver dollar was minted. Before we get to the score, however, let's walk you back a little bit in history. This is probably one of the most talked about coins in many of our YouTube community's channels, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but rather to give you enough details for you to understand this coin. So why do we call it the Morgan silver dollar? Simple answer, just like Barber, we had a knack of giving nicknames to the creator. George Thomas Morgan was the artist who created the artwork, so we call it the Morgan dollar. He actually was a Brit who came to America in the late 1800s and worked under the 6th chief engraver, Charles Barber, who had a wicked mustache and is commonly known for what we call the Barber half dollar, the Barber quarter, the Barber dime, and the Liberty Head nickel. Morgan was named the 7th chief engraver after Barber, and it's really hard for me to say if even Mercanti is on the same stage in significance as Barber or Morgan, but I would really like to hear from you on your thoughts, so in the comments please let me know who you think the most impactful engraver in American coins is between Barber, Morgan, or Mercanti. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Anyway, back to the Morgan. As many of you know, 1878 was when the Morgan was issued, and it ran through 1921, which is roughly 100 years ago, which is why the Mint is issuing a 100-year anniversary Morgan that you can pick up from their website right now. It actually, I think, is sold out, but that's neither here nor there. It's a beautiful coin, but it has a premium that would make a Kardashian vomit. I'm not sure if I can commit to one myself yet. The Coinage Act of 1873 is what led to the creation of the Morgan. I'm not going to go into that act for sake of valuing your time, but if you're interested, please check out videos from some in our community who are experts in this subject and have already posted about this act. Two channels that just come off the top of my head are Salivate Metals or CoinHound. The Morgan dollar is said to be 90% silver and 10% copper, which is why they tone a little bit differently than many of the coins that you might have that are pure silver. There's so much we can talk about in this coin, but the angle I want to bring to you today is the angle of this coin's relevance in the time it was minted. Mine happened to be minted in 1901. So what was life like in America in 1901? Let's start with some notable events. In January, there was a typhoid outbreak in Seattle, which ended up being one of 2 outbreaks of the disease. Kind of sounds familiar to us in 2021, doesn't it? Moving on in the year, oil was discovered in what would be called Spindletop, which is in Beaumont, Texas, which changed the skyline of Texas forever. Queen Victoria died in England. Baseball's American League declared itself a major league. U.S. Steel is incorporated by J.P. Morgan, making the first billion-dollar company. William McKinley was sworn in office as president. The New York Stock Exchange crashes. President McKinley was assassinated, and Teddy Roosevelt took office as president, who then invited Booker T. Washington to the White House, causing Democrats in the South to riot. So as you can see, the crazy year we had in 2021 actually doesn't hold a candle to those chaotic times in America in 1901, yet pride in this great land feels like it was so much more then than it is in our time. This was a time where the middle class was going to be awakened for the first time as Roosevelt, the president, started a process of breaking up monopolies so that many businesses could be created by individuals rather than the country being run by a handful of fat cats at the top. Silver like the Morgan could actually find its ways into the hands of carpenters, a tailor, a farrier, or even a farmer. The idea of silver that you can hold resounded with many of the working class and soon to be middle class because, as you can see with the tumultuous times, having trust in a greenback or any paper representation of wealth really meant nothing if there is no stability. This is the main reason people turn to gold and silver as an investment today. They are not sure about the represented value of things like paper money or in the stability of where we're at. That is a topic for a different video, though. It is my hope that you understand this and any other Morgan were therefore an attainable coin of value for so many, especially out in territories that were not yet states in the western United States. This is why in westerns you often see Morgans on the table in poker games, and is why you often see them used to pay the tab at the saloon. It is thought in 1901 that this one silver dollar would be worth a little over $30 at today's value, showing over a 3,000% increase in our inflation. I would imagine that many Americans in 1901 would have one of these in their pocket, and to have one like mine that was minted in San Francisco right after the gold rush makes me wonder how many hands passed this weathered coin before reaching my own. How many stories does this Morgan hold? How many times did this coin provide somebody with a life-saving meal, or maybe was it used to save a family farm? These are stories that are impossible to know, but fun to think about. Now that you understand this coin in a manner that I hope brings you value, let's place it on our 60-point scale. One rating in the time it was minted and another rating to give you current ratings for our Morgan. Our first area of interest is in the front artwork. We have a classic and beautiful representation of liberty with the standard E pluribus unum Latin phrase of one out of many, or many out of one. This to me is so unique and something that I wish we went back to. We were the only country that I can think of that revolved all of its currency around an idea rather than a dictator, monarch, or leader. It showed where our allegiance truly lied, which was not with a party or president, but rather an intangible and transcendental idea of liberty. I do not think the artwork ever knocked anyone off their feet, but it is beyond beautiful, so I think that in 1901 it would have scored a 9 out of 10, and today it would be very close at an 8. The only reason it has a detraction today is that it's hard to find a non-worn version of the original artwork, and it is knocked off constantly in the round market all the time. Now for the back of the coin. We have the outstretched eagle with arrows and olive branch, which has been an ongoing theme in American coins for as long as I can remember. This is a very unique rendition and seems to be less classical in the obverse and almost looks like a Norman period rendition with the odd ratios of the features of the bird as well as the less refined overall look. It is, however, a major classic. I think in 1901 it would have scored an 8 out of 10, and I think that holds true today because the back is not ever knocked off like the front is, and it's still a very iconic coin. Now for mintage. This is where there's a giant gap in our scoring. In 1901, there was not a bullion market like there is today. This coin would have been a standard in society, but you did not have mints making low volume runs on bullion like we can find today. In 1901, there were 2,284,000 of this particular San Francisco mint Morgan minted, whereas the New Orleans mint, the same year, it pumped up over 13 million. So in 1901 terms, this is coming from the San Francisco mint in a much lower mintage amount, and I think that scores you a 7, whereas today's coin, where many coins are running mintages of 25,000, it scores a 1 out of 10. Cultural significance is where we look next. As I stated before, this coin came from a crazy time in America where there was a transition that would forever create and hold the middle class. These Morgans were becoming attainable to so many, and the way that this coin had been sewn into America and its westward expansion is something that I think both today and in 1901 score a perfect 10. Now we come to collectability. This is what we in the community called constitutional silver. Constitutional silver has a huge draw for many in the United States for many reasons. Here's an example. If I went to a bank with $500 and exchanged it for all dimes, I would then have 5,000 dimes that I could look through and see if I had a dime that was minted in 1964 or before that had Roosevelt's head, or maybe even I find a Mercury dime that has Mercury's head on it. and that would be significantly more in value than the standard 10 cents because it would have up to 90% silver content. These would be considered constitutional silver dimes. This Morgan dollar is constitutional silver and thus has a very high collectability for Americans and honestly others throughout the world. There also is such a rich history with this coin in the Wild West genre, making me score this coin a 10 for both 1901 and today's rating. Our last category to rank is uniqueness. This is another category where we see a big difference. In 1901, there was only one design of Morgan dollar minted that would change ever so slightly with mint marks, years, or maybe just a slight little item. This being said, even though it had a high mintage amount as a standard of currency, it really had no other like it, other than the occasional knockoff. This means that in 1901, I would score it a 7 out of 10. It is not so unique that I would not know it was a US coin, but it is unique enough in that time that I would not see any other quite like it. When we fast forward to the current times, however, it seems like every company that makes silver or copper rounds has a version of the Morgan that they mint. It is one of the most reproduced obverses I think I've ever seen. This should be flattering, but it also means in today's terms that this is far from unique, scoring a 2 out of 10. This brings our totals to two separate numbers. In 1901, this coin would score a 51 out of 60, meaning it would have crossed the threshold as an elite coin by our standards. It has all the required traits to have been desired by every working family and should be considered a classic. If we tabulate our score by today's standards, the Morgan does not score quite as highly, landing a 39 out of 60. For a 120-year-old coin, I think that shows that it has some merit even today, as it scored higher than even the Canadian maple by our standard, which I'm sure will not be taken lightly by our flannel-wearing friends up north. In conclusion, this is a coin that I love to feel with my fingers. The stories that this liberty has seen are woven in the cloth of our great nation. This eagle's outstretched wings have seen this nation rebuild from plagues, depression, civil rights actions, war, and famine, and still flap with the same pride, strength, and messages of our ancestors in the pursuit of liberty. This is a coin that is beyond highly recommended by me for any American and for those outside of our borders who want to hold something that represents the USA through much of our growth. This has been one of my favorite videos thus far, and it is my hope that you will subscribe and remember to stay classy and current with the culture of currency.